Good morning. Thank you for inviting Alcis to speak with you today, albeit virtually. My name is Tim Buckley, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Alcis. I've been working for Alcis for the past 7 years, and my background is with the British Army, specialising in mapping and data analysis. Today's presentation is themed on measuring development impact through the use of geospatial technology. During my presentation, we'll focus on 5 areas: remote sensing, measuring change, monitoring progress, providing evidence, and visualizing that data. In each of these topics, we will demonstrate how geospatial technology can be used to measure the impact of programs in complex and remote environments. As an introduction to Alcis, we're a geographic information services company where we specialize in services rather than systems, although we have built spatially enabled platforms for various clients to deliver information to them. We focus on delivering information, knowledge and understanding in fragile and conflict-affected states to help better design, deliver and monitor projects across a range of sectors. We are expeditionary in nature, meaning that we regularly deploy experienced technicians forward to our clients to support them in their environments. We've been working in Afghanistan continuously for over 10 years. Initially our focus was on counter-narcotics, but expanding the remit to encompass agriculture, development, livelihoods and value chains. We regularly partner with national field survey teams and subject matter experts to provide both cultural and expert direction and support to our observations. We have delivered a range of projects for a variety of national governments with interests in the country, along with wider multinational organisations such as NATO and the various development banks. We also regularly support the private and third sector in the delivery of government projects. The company has won a place on several DFID contracting frameworks: FCAS, which does the Fragile and Conflict Affected States Framework, and GIFA, the Global Evaluation Framework Agreement. And more recently, we've won a place on the Syria Research, Monitoring and Evaluation Framework for the UK Government. Alcis's head office is in the UK, with additional subsidiary offices in Dubai and Washington DC. We've had a continuous presence in Afghanistan, and we regularly scale up our staff to meet project demands. So, to the detail. As I mentioned earlier, this presentation will cover the following areas and will draw upon our actual experience delivering projects here in Afghanistan, rather than the theoretical potential of the technology. I'll cover the benefits of this type of approach, how we have identified features and measured change in a variety of factors at a variety of scales. I will show how we've tracked progress of projects regularly over time. And finally, how geospatial technology can be an effective tool with which to visualize and disseminate key information to a variety of stakeholders. There are many benefits of remote sensing. I have a military background where the operating environment and the problems faced, as well as acceptance of this type of technology, are well established and understood. As is often the case, technology advances are driven by defence ambitions and agendas. Satellites and geographic information are no different. However, the translation from military applications into development and humanitarian capabilities, particularly in a country like Afghanistan, are obvious. The most significant benefits that I see from this approach are as follows. Access, getting eyes on the ground. In fragile and insecure spaces, getting your people into the right place and being able to ask the right questions is difficult and beset with risk. The next consideration is the quality of the data. How reliable is it? Imagine you can actually get your field workers into the right place. Can you be confident in the results that they return with, and will they be of a high quality? Satellite imagery does not suffer from the problems associated with more traditional survey techniques. The social biases, the stigma attached to particularly sensitive issues, different perceptions and agendas, and the opportunities for manipulation of data. Satellite imagery is objective and binary in its nature. The object is either there or it isn't. It is either 56.8 hectares of wheat or it's 14.3 hectares of poppy. The road has either been constructed or it has not. The data cannot be skewed in this way. My third point is coverage. With satellite imagery, you have the potential to answer questions comprehensively at the whole district, province, and even country level. It gives you the ability to definitively and completely understand, rather than having to make assumptions based on mathematical extrapolations from a limited sample dataset. It's extremely difficult for surveyors to reach a representative sample in a complex environment such as Afghanistan. Satellite imagery offers an uncompromising alternative to some of these non-representative datasets and techniques. The next consideration is being able to answer historical questions. Complex environments are opaque places. Where archive imagery allows it, remote sensing can give you the ability to look back in time and answer questions that weren't apparent at the time of the inception of a project. For instance, programs implementing agricultural improvements can understand what the crop types were and what the health conditions were in their area of delivery last month, last year, or even in the last decade. This allows established operations the ability to conduct what we call a retrospective baseline. My fifth point is value for money. I would argue that the ability to generate data of this quality over inaccessible terrain, over large areas and multiple time frames, compared to traditional techniques, the inherent risks and limitations associated with them, make remote sensing a very attractive proposition. Coupled with the fact that the data that is collected can be reused for multiple other purposes or projects, means that economies of scale are also available. And my final point is around ease of understanding. We know that a picture can tell 1,000 words. Images and geographically presented data can be far simpler to understand than tables and text. I'll demonstrate this towards the end of the presentation. However, I should point out that whilst remote sensing and geographic analysis does provide so much, it does have its limitations and cannot answer all of the potential questions. It's very good for identifying and measuring physical phenomena and also for understanding what has changed, but it can't always tell you why something has changed. So on to some examples. In this first one, we're going to look at identifying and measuring change. Here we can see an image of some agricultural land in northern Afghanistan. The image was taken in the last couple of weeks. Using our satellite imagery and our interpretation skills, we've conducted an inventory of what is being grown. Additionally, alongside the satellite image, we've tabulated a range of other socioeconomic criteria describing this particular location from previously collected datasets as a point of reference and for future comparison. This satellite sampling can be conducted over the same place at multiple times to build an in-depth profile of the individual farm. Panning out from the individual to the community level, we can map field boundaries and confidently quantify the volume of crops being grown on a field-by-field basis over time. Here we see a community that is growing opium poppy, represented by the purple-coloured fields on the left-hand side, and over time changing to a predominant wheat crop the following year, represented by the green-coloured fields. And in the final year, the change is complete and no more poppy is being grown. This map narrative visualises the agricultural dynamics and metrics of a switch between crops for the community level of cultivation. When you repeatedly conduct this exercise over the whole agricultural area, over a 4-year time period, as we have done in this example from Helmand, you can start to see what and where change is occurring. Against this understanding, you can start to ask the complex questions. So yes, we can identify what is being grown. We can see what is changing. But we can't always understand what is driving that change. Moving on to monitoring progress. A project wanted us to track and observe the uptake and usage of greenhouses in Afghanistan. Field teams were also tasked with going out and collecting data. Given some of the limitations and risks, it was essential that oversight was provided. We were brought into the project late during the implementation phase, 4 years after it had actually been started. But because Alcis has been covering and collecting data across the country since 2004, this was not a problem and allowed us, as previously mentioned, to conduct that retrospective baseline. Using our historic archive, we were able to find imagery over the area of interest in the 7 preceding seasons and confirm when the greenhouse was actually constructed, and combine this with other sources of data that have been collected. Because of the wide area coverage, we were also able to identify greenhouses that had potentially been misappropriated and found their way into the hands of people who were not intended to be beneficiaries of the project. So what you see in the slide is a satellite image from spring 2012 with a blue dot in the middle, which is where the greenhouse will appear as we scroll through time forward. In summer 2012 there's still no greenhouse, but by spring 2013 we can see that the greenhouse has been constructed. Summer 2013, the greenhouse is there, and this is a great image from spring 2014 of the greenhouse in full use. In summer 2014 we can see that the roof covers have been pulled back, but the main superstructure remains in place. And by winter the covers are back over the greenhouse again. And finally in spring 2015, a couple of months ago, the greenhouse was in place and being used. My next example is on providing evidence to support actions. Conversely, when projects are not going as successfully as had been hoped, it is essential that project managers are given the irrefutable evidence with which to make their future decisions. This allows teams to react to both changing project environments as well as struggling project elements and enable them to make accountable decisions. Again, we're looking at our greenhouse project, where it was in the best interest of the management team to present a positive picture of the impact of these structures. We found ourselves in a situation arguing over whether a particular greenhouse was being used and the value of the commodities that it was allegedly outputting. Using our remotely sensed data and combining it with GPS tagged imagery taken by local field surveyors using our data collection systems, we could link up the two different data types and prove beyond opinion-based argument that the greenhouse was no longer productive. So in spring 2012 we can see that there is no greenhouse in the area of interest. As we jump forward a year to spring 13, still no greenhouse. But then in spring 14 we see the greenhouses, 4 of them, have been constructed. Summer 2014, the 4 greenhouses are still there. As we move into winter 2014, you can see that one of the central greenhouses has had some of its covers removed, but the others still appear intact. However, by spring 2015, 3 of the greenhouses have been completely removed, and the remaining 1 is not looking in good condition. The field survey teams that went there took these images, which shows just how run down this part of the project was. This was extremely useful information to capture and show. We can now categorically display that just because a greenhouse had been built, it did not mean that it was functioning or effective, contributing to the success of the project. Indeed, as seen in this example, the structure may not have been functioning effectively or might even have been misappropriated for use at a later date. This example shows the longitudinal nature of geospatial mapping and the transparency it can deliver in these opaque operating environments. My final slides focus on visualizing data. How can we best link together and identify trends that people can follow, understand, and make use of? How can we make our data effective and influence future decision making and best practice? Displaying data spatially can help identify patterns that are not readily discernible from tabular data. Take this table of sector and value of outputs in northern Afghanistan by different provinces and districts. Can anyone see the patterns or visualize and understand the realities of these figures? However, when presented on a map and visualizing the data as geographically anchored pie charts, users can quickly identify and digest trends. Presenting this information on a map soon reveals where communities are doing well, where opportunities exist, and which sectors should be prioritized. For example, on the western side, there are no grapes as a significant crop type. The outputs are mainly orchards and wheat fields, but with limited output value. On the eastern side, there are a mixture of crops, but mainly they are in low values. The central region shows a good crop diversity and spread. There are generally higher value agricultural outputs here. This example clearly shows how by presenting the data like this, the end user is able to react quickly to the information and leverage this into the future of the project. The client is able to manage the project from a position of strength, quickly reacting to change whilst observing the project completely in transparency and making accountable decisions. In Afghanistan, Alcis has been asked by various clients to develop and build information portals in which data can be collected, stored, visualized and shared. Using Alcis's internet-based technology, we can provide users with a common understanding of the situation in a simple way. In this final example about greenhouses, we built an information portal that allows people to search on maps and through tabular data to find places or points of interest that they can then interrogate and look at the different attributes associated to that point. You can also view images in chronological order and track the development over time. In this example, we have formatted the data in a timeline of events and attached field captured imagery to that timeline to show the progress and development of the greenhouse. Alcis uses a variety of data narrative techniques to make the information as appealing and accessible as possible for the end user. Not only has this led to a greater understanding of the data gathered, but there is also a correlation suggesting that the more accessible the information is, the wider the dissemination of this data amongst project stakeholders. To conclude, geospatial technology has the ability to provide quality, quantifiable data to measure development impact. It is an enabling tool to regularly monitor transient environments and project delivery. Finally, this technology provides an effective platform to disseminate information in an easy-to-understand manner. Whilst this presentation has primarily focused on agriculture, the techniques demonstrated can be applied to many other sectors, including infrastructure and population, and a range of other changing phenomena. Please do visit our website for further information, or feel free to contact me on my email address. Thank you for your time. I hope to be present on Skype after this presentation to answer any of your questions.